All right. So let's just talk a little bit about, who this is for. Hopefully everyone here has worked with PM before. Guessing yes, yes. I think another thing that hopefully we can get out of this is optimizing just relationships with PMs and getting a better understanding of a distinction of roles. I personally think the product manager title is like one of the worst misnomers in tech. Like most product managers are not managers. They're rarely solely responsible for product unless it's a pretty small product. So they're not really managers of the product either. So it just feels like a really uncomfortable and strange title that may be responsible for more misunderstandings than it is helpful. I think producer is a cooler name and like better describes the actual job than product manager. Doesn't imply management. You can be an executive producer, I guess, and they do have people management responsibilities, but more typically they're doing the similar things in film that PMs are doing in software, which is coordinating cross-functional teams and ensuring that the right thing is getting built. So to me, the like really key things are answering the why, what, and when questions collaboratively with development teams. The why being probably the most critical part. Not just like the question of like, why do users need this? And in the Chromium context, users is often developers. Like as a platform, we're in this like really weird case where we both care about end users at the end of the day, but we also, in some ways, the way that we do that best is by caring about developers the most. So it's platform work is super unusual. When I talk to PMs who work on like more end user features, like I sometimes get a little bit of envy for them because they launch a feature and like it's in front of users immediately and they have like dashboards that like tell them straight away whether something's working right or going terribly wrong. And they can change course. And the metaphor that I've come to think of it as is like they get to drive speedboats and we get to drive like cargo ships where like you turn the wheel and the boat's going to turn like 30 minutes later. So you want to be on the right course and you want to make sure that you don't need to turn suddenly because the thing's not going to move if you do need to turn suddenly. So it's a really different ballgame doing what it is that we do, both from an engineering perspective and from a PM perspective. I think it's maybe a product PM would disagree, but I think what we do is more challenging because of the lack of immediate feedback, because we have to guess a little bit at what we can do for developers that's actually going to affect a better outcome for end users. I think that part is just super hard because who knows what developers are going to do with the thing that we're building, and like we have to imagine what the worst, smartest person could possibly do with the thing that we're shipping. So that's just it's really challenging and difficult part of the work. But the PM should ensure that the why is clearly answered, and like kind of coming back to how to tame your PM. If you don't feel like you understand the why of something that's on the roadmap, that's a smell. And the best thing to do is like bring that up ASAP, because either the PM hasn't done a good job of communicating the why, or they haven't done all the homework that needs to be done to correctly answer the why. In either case, they should be doing more and communicating that clearly with the team. So not only should you know the answer to those questions, but your teammates should know the answer to those questions as well. That should include understanding the expected impact of the work. So like, are there actual metrics and measures in place for success? Is everyone like clear on what success looks like? And that's usually in the PRD. If it's not, that's a problem. And that like, especially in platform work that we do, there's a lot of kind of guesswork involved, because it's like, well, are we going to be at like 1% adoption in 12 months? Especially when we have to wait for Firefox and Safari to ship it, and like, when are they going to ship it? We don't have any control over their timelines. When's it going to hit interop? I don't think that answering like it's hard. Like, yes, it is hard, but I don't think saying like it's hard is, lets us off the hook for trying to set measures for what it is that we do. Even if we guess wrong on success measures, that's data for setting future success measures. So even failing to achieve success measures that seemed reasonable hopefully gives us information in a retrospective as to like, okay, let's imagine the different scenarios here. We have success measures that we missed, but we still feel like the features of success. Why do we feel like the features of success? And like, what were the actual measures that we should have used to judge that? Something else that I think we can do in Chrome is look at leading versus lagging metrics. And in fact, we kind of have to because of this whole building a platform issue. Like the measures that we actually care about are probably lagging metrics. Like those are like developer adoption, and that's going to happen last. It's going to happen so late that maybe nobody on the team is still working on the team by the time that measure is actually achieved. So like, I don't know, and we often look at leading measures like, do partners actually want this? Like, are they, the very earliest leading metric is because like most of the partners that we work with are pretty busy teams. Like, will they actually pick up the phone and like listen to us if we shout out to them and say like, hey, are you interested in talking about X? And like they won't even respond to the email. Like that's a pretty good signal that maybe it's not a super valuable feature that they're going to want. And then, there's a whole bunch of other measures along the way. So for each significant feature, something that's going to be like a sweet quarter plus of work, I tend to think there should be not just like the final goal metrics, but a series of metrics that are getting us from when we're seriously starting work on the project through to it's shipped through to like this is the final measure of success that maybe some other PM and some other SWE is going to be looking at 3 to 5 years from now. That being said, the longevity of folks in working on Chromium is much higher than our industry average. So I guess a lot of us are still here after 3 to 5 years, which is actually kind of nice. I really appreciate that about working in Chrome. I've been in other places where like 12 to 18 months was like a more typical team member tenure, and that's a lot of churn. There's also this, like leadership alignment side of things. I like to think that the PM role should involve making sure that the team understands what's coming down from leadership in terms of like what the key directions are for the overall product, how that fits into like corporate vision and strategy, how we're contributing up to it. PMs are not like, don't own that exclusively, like TLs, TLMs, like everyone plays a really important role in ensuring that alignment. But the PM should be ensuring that there's real impact to those corporate strategies from what the team is doing, and should raise the flag both with the team and with their own leadership if something's out of alignment, because that's probably a signal that the team's going to run into trouble getting resources or other things in the future if they're not aligned to what the rest of the organization is looking for. So that is another completely reasonable question to ask your PM, is like, how does this align to our annuals, like, in the case of Chrome, to Chrome's annual strategy, and like how's Chrome's annual strategy aligning up to the overall Google corporate strategy, and why does, not only does why are what we're working on matter to developers and users, but why is this going to matter to the executive, and how are we sure that we have a mandate to do this job beyond the next few months? So there's a fair bit of inter-team coordination that goes on through all of that, and there's, I don't know, I describe it as like sort of soft skill aspects of the role there. Hi, welcome, join us. I guess just having sort of spidey senses, especially for when things do feel out of alignment, because it's better to detect that sooner rather than later and ask hard questions up to leadership as to like what their expectations are if they've changed. I've been on projects in the past, fewer at Google, which is a good thing, but I've been on projects in the past where it was kind of clear that, hey, welcome. Yeah, no problem. Come on in. I've been on projects in the past where it was clear that the project had somehow been staffed or still had like lingering staff, but it wasn't like a darling when it came from leadership, and it didn't really have a clear mandate to succeed. And as a result, resources were just sort of stripped away as the project proceeded, resulting in like a truly like a goal that was maybe well spelled out, but was unattainable by the team with the resources allocated. And I tend to think that in conjunction with TLs is something that a good PM should be able to see, like, wait a minute, like this goal is unattainable, and we either need to have a hard conversation with leadership about either we give this project the resources that it actually needs to succeed, or we should all be working on something else. That could be a hard conversation to have because, I think we all get attached to our work and the projects that we're working on. And there's a chance when you're having that conversation that the answer is, well, yeah, this project doesn't have the mandate that it needs to succeed, and you should be doing something else. And that's not something that usually people want to hear very much. I know I don't, but those are the kind of hard conversations that should be flagged by PM, or may also be flagged by TLM. Come on in. If you want to join, come on in. So the way that I see it, like engine PMs in partnership to solve the user's needs. I must have been editing this morning when my brain was not caffeinated, so pardon the spelling. In Chromium's case, of course, these are developer problems, and we want to be solving those elegantly and efficiently. I think there's a lot behind some of these words. Like, I think elegantly implies in a way that if we weren't working on Chrome, if we were working on a product that needed to be differentiated in the market, again, this is something that's very strange about working on Chrome is, with Chromium and specifically, like, we don't want things to be differentiated. We actually want the feature to work the same everywhere, which is not typically the case. But assuming that some of us, or perhaps all of us at some point, will work on something other than Chromium, elegantly can mean in some way differentiated from competing products. And then efficiently, to me, also implies that we're not building things that developers don't actually find useful or users don't actually find useful.
Like, thinking about that, like with Chromium, we don't want to be differentiated from other browsers, but we do want to be differentiated from the native platforms. So that's
that is a good point. And like, actually, let me clarify that too, right? Because like, we can differentiate on speed, or like there are things where it's great for like benchmarks. It's awesome for Chromium to differentiate on that. We do set targets for that. So, but in terms of like core features and functionality, users benefit the most when things go through standards and interop and we have widespread adoption. So, on the topic of native apps, I think, like, versus how I tend to think of that is a developer. Let's take blank slate developer. Blank slate developer has the choice as to what technology stack they choose to join, and if we want to make the web stack compelling, we have to be able to offer them the ability to, like, basically have competitive employment. Like, they need to be able to get paid to do work on projects they want to work on, and ship great stuff. And that's a place where the web has been doing super well, I think, in some areas, like the web on desktop. If you were starting a new desktop application, people would actually think you might be a bit crazy to not build it on the web. Like, you're starting a new desktop app and you're not building it as a web app, people would be like, what are you doing? Which is great. That's a great place to be. But I think, it's the exact opposite in the mobile first world, where we see so many especially in APAC and other markets, like the website is basically just a stub to direct people. Come on in, but to direct people to the native app, and like that's too bad. And we should be asking ourselves what's going on there. Some of those things are technical, some of them are marketing and non-technical. And so the answer to those equations is complex, but yeah, thinking about how we could solve at least the technical parts of those questions is super relevant to the role, and something that both engineers and PMs working on the web platform should be thinking about. Just for folks who joined, we've got a small group, and so please don't hold questions to the end, bring them up as we go through it. Yeah.
Sorry if you already addressed this.
Yeah.
My sense is that Microsoft and Google treat the PM eng boundary very differently, like it's in a different place. How do you think about that?
So almost every organization I've seen does treat that boundary a little bit different. My next slide is kind of hits this one. So this is sort of how Google tends to think about it. I would note that not every team gets a technical program manager. So this is actually a little bit. This part is like a little bit of luxury, whereas most teams have some PM support and some end support. So there tends to be joint overlap between these three roles in terms of developing OKRs, doing planning, timelines. TPGMs are most common when there can be a lot of cross team, inter-team coordination, for example. So multiple engineering teams working on related features that tends to pull in a TPGM. Complex ship schedules or release schedules and stuff like that. Also things where TPGMs are more common. Product requirements doc, typically, first pass written by PM, but then going to be signed off by engineering. Something that I've noticed about Google generally, Chrome very much specifically, I can't think of a single PM that I've worked with on the Chrome team who didn't come from an engineering background. I'm guessing that's probably true at Microsoft too.
More or less, yeah. And when you say engineering background,
they probably went to computer science and computer engineering for school.
There's obviously
they haven't done it in a while.
Yeah. I'm a PM at Microsoft, so I can give some angle.
Yeah, I'd actually really appreciate it if you chime in, because I don't know what the differences tend to be there.
Yeah. Well, so
go ahead.
You've done both, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I think the thing I was going to say was looking at this, and I'll look at my Microsoft colleagues to course correct me or chime in too. It feels like PM and Eng is roughly the same, and I think dev leads and dev managers tend to fill the technical program manager role a little bit. That gets spread to the other two roles, but I think the people managers tend to take some of the the technical program manager. But I think roughly that's pretty similar.
There was also a shift a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
our PMs used to be program managers, and then at some point they became product managers.
Yeah.
And they tried delineating what new responsibilities were, and I think it's been still a bit murky.
It wasn't just a title change. There was actual role. There was supposed to be a role change.
for some people. So it was different by org. So some organizations took their program managers and they made some of them TPMs and some of them product managers and had a split there. I think Edge went they turned all our program managers into product managers because that's mostly what we were doing. But the role responsibilities really didn't change that much. I think a chunk of the kind of the technical program manager role went, like I said, kind of went a little bit toward leads. I think some of the dev leads took a little bit more responsibility there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think even organizationally, you're going to find at least at Microsoft, and I'm sure it's true at Google too, the role of the PMs is drastically different.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think about what's his name? The guy that we worked with in office, who was always part of the tracing.
Robert?
Yeah. Robert Flaming.
Yeah.
Super technical, very, might as well have been an engineer. Except he wasn't checking in.
He was.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like the
Alex Russ was the product manager.
very,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so we have a wide variety. Yeah.
I've found, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list of like signals here, but generally speaking, I think, and like this is a big generality because you like I think like Alex Russell is kind of like a really good counterexample, which is like generally I would say PM should not be in the weeds designing things, but it's also super rare for someone who stepped into the PM role to be a material expert on the tech that's being built. It does happen, and I think it might even and like might happen in biosciences and like other things a little bit more than happens in tech. But yeah, I would say something that I've actually seen go awry is PMs who did engineering school but haven't done engineering for a while, trying to out engineer their engineering teams is like something that could go very wrong. So I generally think PMs should be handing that over to the team. But like you said, there's so much dramatic differences both in the individual backgrounds of the PM as well as where the organization draws the boundaries of those overlapping circles that like you can't make a rule that you will find an exception for. Basically. We're almost at time, so I just like wanted to cover a couple of things before we wrap. Like, I think one of the things that's super different about PM and Chromium features is that just having like goodwill for developers and users is insufficient. Like we're driving a machine that powers like a quarter of the commerce, maybe more on the planet, and accidental oopsies affect billions of people across all Chromium browsers. Like it's crazy, the leverage point. And so like I think of this like whole like iron, giant analogy. Like Iron Giant might be a nice robot, but like one wrong step and he's pushed the neighborhood. You want to jump in?
We had an example of this with the carousel features recently, where the external community felt like we were running over their needs.
Yeah.
And it's all engineers on the Chrome side like interacting with that external community. And this slide says like a PM should be involved in figuring out how to navigate that tension. What should we be doing differently?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges that we have in engaging with the community is that it's so vast. So like we could be engaging in good faith with one portion of the community, and because there's so much happening, we have other like portions of the community who like they're tuning in late basically to the conversation. And I mean, I think because like in this particular case, I'm actually involved in that conversation. What we need to do is decide like what with people we should be engaging with, and like what lessons should we be learning, and what do we agree with and what do we disagree with, and where possible, what can we like just say like let's have more dialogue about this. And I think with a community as large and like with the complexity of standards, it's going to happen from time to time, but we should try for it to happen as little as possible. So as much as possible should happen out in the open. But just because something's happening out in the open does not also mean necessarily that everyone who needs to hear it has heard it. So when we know that there are certain people that are like interested in certain features in the community, and so for certain types of features, doing preemptive outreach, like as opposed to just like, hey, we posted this to the working group mailing list or the link dev list, and assuming that everyone who needed to hear it heard it, is not sufficient. That's my take on it. Hyper fast wrap up. Yeah, I'll like call to action. If you don't understand the why of the problem, please do talk to the PM. Like that's a smell. The PM should be able to help you understand why. Or if your PM doesn't understand why and you do, you should also be having a conversation about that. If you need external context for what you're working on, like especially those early signals on features where you know, it's hard to know what the developer community exactly wants, or how are you going to validate early what you're working on is going to matter. Those are things that are absolutely like cues to reach out to the PM. We don't have time for this. I would have actually loved to hear what the best and worst PMing experiences would be, because I think it would have been a lot of fun. But I think the next talk is starting in a couple minutes. So thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for joining.